is the second video for the week 6, and sorry for the last one. The first one was immediately stopped unexpectedly because I got a phone call from my wife, and she wanted me to come over because she has a little emergency in the hospital. So the video was stopped in the middle of nowhere. So the first video was pretty short one, and we're gonna continue the real part of the chapter in the second video. Okay, so the location was changed. This is my home, and no, I'm home with my family, the babies and babysitter, and my wife. So a little noise may come over here, but you can just concentrate on this video. Okay. Once again, the majority of the last video was dedicated to explaining about the midterm. Okay, so some guys were worried about the possible situation of cheating if we take the midterm as the online version. And I told you you can defend yourself with the similar strategy. I mean, if you study individually without any friends for this course, so you are pretty much worried about some, unequal cheating situation, then you can gather your friend and make a new friend in this class by using this cyber campus. Or if you want, you can shoot me an email, then I can connect you with the other guys by myself. Okay. So you can just make a group and you can prepare for the midterm within that group, or you can just solve the question together. It is totally okay with me because it is impossible for me to detect that behavior. And we know some guys will definitely do that. So there is no reason to avoid that behavior because maybe you believe justice or something, but this is not the word of justice. This is the word for, efficiency, word for the grading, right? Definitely you have to avoid some criminal situation like you shouldn't pay some money for somebody to take your exam instead of you. That's kind of criminal, and if you are detected that behavior, then you're gonna be harshly punished. I'm pretty sure about that. So you shouldn't do that type of illegal behavior, but you can utilize the maximum amount of flexibility in the open book type of exam, right? Open book means you can use any information available around you, including people. So you can maximize that resource by yourself by doing something legal, action. Okay, that's my suggestion. Okay, so in this chapter, we can study a little bit of applications of consumer choice theory. So based on three important concepts about the consumer choice theory. The first one was independence curve. The other one was the utility function. And the last one was the budget constraint. We can use those three concepts to define the optimal consumer choice problem, how to solve it. Now we know that. So this is a time to expand our knowledge to the variety around the consumer choice theory. So we will revisit the concept of demand curve, and we see how demand curves should be shifted or affected by any external source of changes. Then we can go to some macroeconomic things based on microeconomic foundation. All right. So I remember we briefly studied about the equation number one. Number one is different form of our budget constraint. It is a linear curve, which means that it is a straight line. Your budget constraint curve will not be a curve, which means that it is always a straight line because the market price will be given to us linearly. There is no kinds of curveball. Always the fastball is in our knowledge about the information of the market prices. And equation 2 to 4 are just given information about some prices and the income. So your initial market price for B, maybe burrito, again, burrito is $12. And the price for W, I don't know what does W mean. Wine. Okay, so the B means the beer and the W means wine. So the wine is more expensive than beer. That's reasonable because the cheap wine is not very good. It is worse than just normal beer. So I strongly recommend you not to buy a cheap shitty beer. Cheap shitty wine. I think the minimum price for the qualified wine would be 2만 원 or 3만 원 sold in Emart or Costco. But if you get hired and get paid by company after graduation, I think you'd be better to drink a beer rather than wine because beer is cheap and beer is delicious. And your income is about more than $400. So pretty much poor person in this case. But anyway, if even this guy is really poor guy, his income is just more than $400, but he's still consuming beers and wines. That's pretty much impressive things. If you are a really poor person, but you can still drink something, that's pretty, strong signal to us. Maybe alcoholic guy. Anyway, let's see the graph. So your budget constraint is graphed by the blue straight line. Okay, on the vertical axis there is number of wine, and on the horizontal axis there is number of, or just amount of the beer we can consume. And we can get the red curve, which is concave to the origin. It is your indifference curve. Indifference curve means some possible combination of consumption between wine and the beer, which will give you the same identical satisfaction. Okay, so at any point on this indifference curve will give you the same happiness. It means the same utility. Okay, so for instance, 2.8 gallons of wine and 26.7 gallons of beer will give you some happiness on our first indifference curve. So our equilibrium point is E1 because the indifference curve 1 and your straight budget constraint will meet at only one point because your indifference curve is concave. So concave means, what can I do for you? This is the this is the round one, right? Pretty round. And this is not round. This is just straight line, right? Round one and the straight line will meet only one point, okay? Because they are different dimensions. Straight line is just kind of the two-dimensional world, and the round one is living in a kind of higher dimension. It is hard to explain at this level, but if you have two different kinds of world in the different dimension, then there is only one point to meet each other. Have you ever seen the movie Interstellar? Interstellar is talking about the black hole, and the black hole is the same story with a much higher dimension. But anyway, so the E1 is the only point where the straight line and the concave curve can meet each other. So we can say that the E1 is our equilibrium or the optimal level of consumption for this guy, the poor guy. So the bottom one is the different dimension, right? So the vertical line represent your demand. Okay, so the price of beer per unit, and the horizontal line is the same, the amount of beer. So interpretation is different. At the E1, you are consuming 26.7 gallons of beer with the price level of the $12 per unit. So E1 is one of your demand point at your first independence curve I1, right? But if the price of beer is going down, this is pretty good news for this poor guy. If the price of beer is going down, then we can just come back to our equation number 1. The PB is going down, right? The PB is going down means that the slope of this curve, negative PB over PW, right, is going down. What happens to this straight line if you have the smaller number of the slope? The curve will go outward with the same intercept, right? So the same intercept, 12, but the slope is going down, so the curve will be flatter. So it is just going outward. How to interpret this situation economically? What does the budget constraint curve mean to you as a consumer? Any point inside the budget constraint is the point where you can consume. Any point out of this curve means you cannot consume the combination of those two wines and beer. So the expansion of curve or expansion of the budget constraint means that you can consume more goods and services, more combination of wine and beer. And we know that your independence curve, departing from the origin, will give you the higher level of happiness, higher level of utility. I mean, in this example, I2, your second independence curve, will give you the higher level of utility, right? And it is reasonable in our common sense because the cheaper beer with the same taste will give you the higher happiness, right? So when I was the graduate student, one of my main job with my friend's name was Scott and Chris. Scott is from South Carolina and Chris was from Texas. So we really love drinking beer when I was the graduate student because we are pretty much poor guys, much lower income, but a lot of things to do, so much stress. So drinking beer is the only solution for us. So we really, really hardly tried to get the cheaper beers in some happy hours. If we found out some cheaper beers, then we were really happy. So the same situation. The price going down means the going outward or expansion of your budget constraint. So the higher level of independence curve meet at the different point where the point will give you the higher level of utility. So the equilibrium point will move from E1 to E2. So let's draw out the demand curve. Definitely the price is going down from $12 per unit to the $6 per unit. So price going down on our bottom picture, but your consumption level for the beer is going up from 26.7 gallon to 44.5 gallons per year. So E1, E2, you can just connect those two lines, then you can get just a normal shape of demand curve. Once again, the price is going down further from $6 to $4, then you can get the better equilibrium point E3 with the lower price level at the $4 per unit, then you can get the more consumption in the beer. And your budget constraint is going outward further. So connecting E1, E2, and E3 on the bottom picture will give you, downward demand curve which is normal to us from our principles of microeconomics class. But on the upper picture, you can also connect small e1, small e2, and small e3. Then you can get some upward sloping graph, which is called the price consumption curve. Price consumption curve is nothing new thing. You can just connect the combination of wines and beer with the changes of the price of beers, assuming the price of wine and your income are the fixed at the same level. So this price consumption curve will give you your change of combination between wine and beer. The combination of your consumption for wine and beer are increasing with the lower level of beer price level. So your price consumption curve is upward graph. Okay. So this is the summary for our analysis. We can draw out the same demand curve, but with a little bit more deeper insight on your consumption behavior. So you may have heard about the name of Engel curve. Engel curve is the relationship between the quantity demanded of your any good or services and the income. So now we can turn the page to the effect of changes in income on your demand curve. So it's going to be a little bit more interesting. The big assumption here is the prices of wine and beers are the same. It is not changing. The only changing external factor is your income. Okay, so now we can draw out not the price consumption curve, but now in this case the income consumption curve. So we start with the same graph with the same initial point E1. So your demand curve is the same. So the middle picture is the demand for your beer consumption, with the bottom picture will give you the relationship between your income and the amount of beer you consume. Okay, so we can draw out the demand curve, which may be normal, and also the income consumption curve, which may be upward in my expectation. Okay, so your income is going up from about $400 to about $600. This is our assumption. So your income is increasing. So if you're a normal person, then you can increase the number of beers for sure, right? Because beer is always good for our life. But the shape of your budget constraint is a little bit different. Let's go back to our equation number 1 to find out the difference. So now is the changing part is y, intercept, right? How about the slope? Assuming the price of beer and wine are the same, your slope, negative PB over PW, is not changing, right? The only changing part is your intercept part, y over PW. And we know that your intercept is increasing because the PW is the same, but the numerator part, the y part, is increasing from $419 to $628. Okay, so the intercept is increasing, which means that your budget constraint is going outward the same, but now slope does not change. Only the intercept is changing, so it is going shift like this, not shift like this. Okay, so from L1 to L2, we can have some expanded budget constraint, which means that economically you can consume more goods and services, which means finally you can have the better achievement in your happiness with the I2, not I1 anymore. So your optimal consumption point will move from E1 to E2. But the problem is that the price of beer is not changing. Okay, so your demand curve, you should be a little bit careful about this. So the price of beer is the same, fixed at the 12 per unit, but your consumption level per beer is increasing because your income is increasing from 26.7 gallons to 38.2 gallons. So your absolute level of consumption per beer is increasing, but at the same level of price of beer, $12. So this is the result of your middle picture. But now you have the third picture. Sorry. Your income is increasing from about $400 to about the $630, and your consumption level per beer is increasing. So your income consumption curve will draw out like the upward sloping graph from E1 to E2. It is normal, but now we'll turn the another page to find out there is abnormal things happen in our life. Okay, so your income consumption curve is upward graph, and you have different demand curve at the same price level of beer. So you have the three different demand curve in this case because the price does not change. The other fact change. So this is not the movement along the curve, movement along the demand curve, but it is the shift of the curves. The first main difference between the effect of price on your demand curve and the effect of income on your demand curve. Okay. The second difference is the angle curve, which is a part of this income consumption curve. Another name of it. So your income is increasing, then your consumption per beer is increasing. So the beer is kind of sensitive to your income changes, but we can safely say that the beer is a normal good because your income is going up, then your consumption level per beer is also going up. So the income elasticity of demand is defined by the percentage of your quantity demanded over the percentage of your income. So which will be rearranged to like the third part of the equation 5. The change of quantity demanded over initial level of quantity demanded over the change of your income over your initial income. So it is better to keep in your mind the definition of income elasticity of demand, but also the last term of the equation number 5 is the easier expression for the income elasticity of your quantity demanded. It is called the Barphi. Maybe Barphi is the name for the green letter on your first part of the equation number 5. So, for instance, if there is 1% increase in your income, will give you the 3% increase in the quantity demanded of that good. Then that good's the income elasticity of demand is 3% over 1% equal to the 3. So this good has pretty much elastic behavior to your income changes. It is much sensitive guy. So now we can define the normal good and the inferior good. The normal good is usually defined by the positive income elasticity. If this good has the negative income elasticity, there is typo, right? Then we can say that it is inferior good. Inferior good is usually imagined like some goods that heavily consumed when you are poor, but you are not going to consume that good when you get richer, like ramen or some fast food. I like fast food at this point. That's pretty paradoxical to this norm. When I was the graduate student, where I was the poorest in my life, I really avoid the fast food because I thought the eating fast food too much would give me some real bad result because I had to study a lot and I had to reduce my time of sleep. And based on that situation, if I would eat a lot of fast food or ramen, then my health condition would be real worse. So I intentionally avoided eating fast food when I was the poor. But now I'm looking for some hamburger shop because the burger, still fast food, is now one of my favorite food because now I can control my health enough. So eating one hamburger per week is not much a big problem in my life. So maybe the fast food is not a good example for me to exemplify our inferior good situation. So what else? What is the example? Maybe cheap car and your income. So yeah, the first year, I was given really old car from my aunt. That was the 13 years old when I was given that car. So I had driven the car for the 4 more years. So when I was come to Chungnam National University, my car was the 17 years old, not working well, and my income had been gradually increasing from the first year of my career after graduating my graduate school to the current year. So I decided to buy a new car. So the old car is not my favorite anymore when I was watching my income increasing. So maybe that is kind of reason, the kind of example for the inferior good. So this is a situation where we practiced before. If your income increases, then your budget constraint going outward, but shift with the parallel lines, right? So slope will be the same. Slope will not be changed if your income changes. Slope changes when the price of any of two goods changes. Okay. So this is the situation where your consumption bundle is one of the housing and the food. So we can separate the region by three parts. Okay. And you can say that there is some characteristics of your two consumption goods, right? So let's look at our equilibrium point first. So E is our equilibrium point because your independence curve will meet your original budget constraint L1. So L2 is the situation where your income is increasing. So point A, B, or C will give you the different stories about the food and the housing. Let us point out the point A. At point A, your income increasing, but the amount of food is decreasing from E to A, right? But your housing consumption is increasing. So as income increasing, the housing consumption is increasing, so the housing is normal good. But since your food consumption is decreasing as your income increasing, so food is inferior good to you. How about point B? At point B, your income is increasing from L1 to L2. Your consumption for food and the housing has been increasing. So at point B, the food and housing, both goods are the normal good to you. At point C, the housing consumption is decreasing, but the food consumption is increasing as your income increasing from L1 to L2. So food is normal good while the housing is inferior good. So even with the same dimension, the characteristics or the sensitivity of any good can be differed. So this is my example again. So yeah, when I was poor and my income increased and I bought more hamburger. So this is not my real world. So this is my imaginary 종혁 situation. So anyway, so you can just observe the changes of your consumption level and the changes of your income level, and compare those two things and look at the direction, or you can look at the sign of your elasticity, income elasticity of demand, then you can determine the characteristic of that good, whether the normal good or the inferior good. Sometimes it is a little bit kinked. I mean, a little bit weird curve can be happen. So as your income increasing from L1 to L2 to L3, sometimes you increase the consumption of a hamburger from E1 to E2. But if your income increasing too much, you get too wealthier, then you should just stop eating hamburger anymore, because now you discover there are many more delicious goods than the hamburger, like the steak or like some Michelin 3-star restaurant things. Okay, so your consumption will be decreasing from E2 to E3. So your angle curve will be increasing first but decreasing later. It could be happen, and in realistically, most of good have this type of angle curve. So now we can combine those two things together in the next video. Okay.